are these people?
So this is an op-ed out of Courthouse News, right? By Milt Policzer. I think that's how you pronounce your name. I hope. So you need something catchy to entice readers. A pop music reference could help. And I wanted to bring this because, speaking of YouTube, it feels like a lot of people have to do this to get their stories read and enough popularity on important stuff. So I feel like it was prevalent, So reading court rulings can be very dull. I'll even call it what is that word? Soporific?
Soporific.
Okay. Mainly because I don't get to say soporific very often, and I think it sounds cool. Sure. Anyway, I bring this up because I have a suspicion there are a lot of judges out there frustrated by the fact that practically no one reads their writing. It's hard to get noticed amidst the daily avalanche of legal opinionating. So here's a recommendation. Draw readers in with the judicial equivalent of clickbait. So he has a fine example from a recent ruling by Kristen Silva, a federal judge in Nevada. This is an opening sentence. 5 years ago, Bruno Mars informed the world that gold jewelry, shining so bright, strawberry champagne on ice, were items he liked. As we all know, Bruno Mars. But it thus becomes impossible not to continue reading. The case, as you may not have guessed, does not involve Bruno Mars, gold, jewelry, or strawberry champagne. What it does involve is a guy who avoids drinks as much as possible because he takes medication for his blood pressure, diabetes, and anxiety, but decided to drink 6 bottles of beer anyway at the Tropicana Casino and Hotel pool. No, he didn't drown. Instead, he went to the park MGM, won $62,000 playing slots, and then consumed a 6-pack of Heinekens within 20 minutes. Reading this, I'm beginning to question this guy's claim that he avoids drinking. He then blacked out and put all his winnings back into the slot machines. Eventually, he claimed the casino caused his loss by over-serving alcohol. There's no claim that they stuck a nozzle down his throat and forced him to drink. The tale gets weirder after that, but I won't spoil it for you except to note there is a Bruno Mars connection. The drunken plaintiff claimed he was owed free Bruno Mars tickets for doing all that gambling. There was no demand for jewelry or champagne. Thoughts so far, Care Bear?
Well, I think the reality is, I think especially in media and especially in independent media, there is some form of clickbait that happens with thumbnails and titles and all that. Like, we all do it. Like,
Yes.
At least I feel like if we do it, we try to make it kind of connect.
Yes.
But I think it's the idea of like, you need a hook for people to come in and read or watch you. Otherwise, no one's going to watch a relatively or seemingly look at a title or a thumbnail that's boring.
Right.
But so it does make sense, I think, in case of like a judicial case. And I think, we've seen this in like news shows. Or like TV shows, like in the courtroom scene, like the opening statement, they might do something like this. So
Right.
I think people might associate that with very Hollywood, but the idea that I think even in the court, I think it's probably more closer to real life than I think people would imagine it is. To me, I think it seems strange, but not. Just given how, like, we're looking for notoriety, we're looking for attention, at like just as far as what we wear, what we say, what we read, what we view. So yeah, I think it's just, I think a sign of the times, more or less. Like, you need a flashy title, you need a flashy look in order to gain the attention that people will take notice of you. So it makes sense.
No, well, it happening to legal papers is kind of dumb,
Right.
you know, but
Right. I get it, but I think, again, for me, it's not so far-fetched that a plaintiff would, or within the prosecution, I forget these like court
words
titles or
and
whatever.
yes,
Yeah. But that an opening statement might sound something like that.
yeah,
So
yep,
that's why I'm saying it's not too far-fetched for me to think that this does happen in real life. But I think now, again, given our age, where we want those 15 minutes of fame, or at least those 15 minutes of attention, just so people can get drawn in. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, it does seem silly and kind of nuts in a relatively within the courtroom setting, but I mean, whatever works, I suppose.
yeah. I mean, what else is that gonna? Is your doctor gonna be like, you wouldn't believe what we found in your cancer diagnosis? Uh, like, anyway,
Right.
sorry. Um, so Milt continues, um, on a little separate tangent on ego. He says, I have no right to judge judges, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think judging can go to a person's head. If you're a judge, you get to decide who's right and who's wrong. People who may be smarter than you have to beg for your approval. What you say goes. You can even dictate how people behave in front of you. How could this not be an ego rush? Recent case in point from a Texas Court of Appeals ruling in a case brought by a municipal court trying to keep his job despite not being reappointed by the city of Brownsville. In his pleadings, Bellamy alleges that removing him from his position as a municipal judge constitutes an irreparable injury because, quote, the citizens of Brownsville will be denied his services, end quote. Yep, the plaintiff, after 12 years on the bench, was convinced he was indispensable to the city, and I guess there was no other judges who can replace him. Self-confidence is an amazing thing. Thoughts on that little tidbit? Like,
Um, I mean, who doesn't have an ego these days?
true.
But yeah, again, like but it it makes sense given our Supreme Court, like just look at them, you
Yep.
know. It's and it's weird because I remember Ron Paclone saying this at one point. He said the idea of like it's weird that we celebritize judges in this country. Like
Yeah.
the idea that we hold, not to say we shouldn't, but like we hold them to such a high regard that they're almost like Beyonce or something like that. Look at Ruth Gainer Ginsburg and kind of the
Mm-hmm.
notoriety, especially in that last, couple of decades of her life. Like, she was kind of compared to like Biggie. That's weird,
Yeah.
but I think that also just kind of comes with the territory in terms of your status. Like the higher level you are, the more of an ego you're gonna have. Or even in this space, like the bigger you are, like the bigger ego that you're gonna have. So I think it's just part of human nature, but given a judge's position of status and power, like yeah, like I could say even for me, like being a teacher, like I think if teachers don't say they don't have some type of ego, like in terms of their teaching, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
Like I know that I do somewhat, but I think I kind of owe that given how long I've been in the field and how much experience that I have that, I don't show it, but I think for me it's not so much the ego, it's just more confidence,
Mm.
given the time that I've put in order to the level where I'm at now. And I think especially given like a judge, you know, imagine like the amount of schooling and work that they have to do in order to get that position, and that even like on lower circuit courts, but that still takes a lot of time and experience in order to get to that position. So
Yep.
you are going to have somewhat of a big head, if you make it to something like that, given that status.
I agree. I mean, I feel like you should probably try to limit it in that position, but maybe that's me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. And not to say all judges necessarily have a huge ego in that way, and they shouldn't. But again, in this day and age, that when class is associated with power, it's easy to kind of get drunk off of it.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree. He continues a little bit on free speech. So he continues, racist, sexist lawyers in Idaho can relax. Your state Supreme Court has upheld your right to express yourself freely. In case you missed it, the Idaho Supreme Court rejected a proposed rule of professional conduct that would have made discrimination and harassment professional misconduct. You might have thought discrimination and harassment would be considered professional misconduct without a bar rule, but the Idaho State Bar felt the need to draft a rule and put it to a vote. The new rule was opposed by the state lawyers, 680 to 329. The Idaho Supreme then rejected the rule because it violated the First Amendment by regulating the content of speech, including derogatory and demeaning comments based upon race, sex, religion, identity, marital status, or socioeconomic status. So you can say whatever you want and still be professional in Idaho. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm actually curious to see what you think, honestly.
Well, I mean, to me, there is a limit to that First Amendment, in my opinion, especially when in regards to like the law, because that's a big part of the rest of our documents,
Right.
and like making sure everyone gets a fair trial is also in those same Bill of Rights. And to me, that's an important distinction to make here, that if you're allowing legal representatives to harass or, I mean, the thing is that who then decides what is and isn't harassment, right?
Right.
Which you would think the legal people would know how to do, but
But
I
I
don't
think
know.
again, there's so much. But I think even with within the law, there's so much nuance and so many like
Yeah, it's how you
holes.
interpret it. Yeah.
How you interpret it, but then like you can weasel your way out of certain things or find something like a gem that might help in your benefit
Yeah.
towards um excuse me towards helping your plaintiff or whoever. So um it's just very weird, but at the same time, it, I don't know. It's just how you interpret it and how I think it's a matter of if you're going to have some honor and integrity and ethics in terms
Yeah.
of you being a judge, or if you're going to blatantly disregard that for your own personal gain or the gain of somebody else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I wonder if they have to be held to some ethics standard elsewhere, you know,
I'm
if
actually
there
not
are
sure about
ethics standards that are, we'll look into that. But I don't know. I wonder if that gets moved up the ladder. If it goes from
that. So
the
what?
Idaho Supreme to like if someone brings it up further, you know,
Mhm.
to like
Right.
a national court, you
What will
know.
be the Supreme Court?
I mean, we all know they're stacked with, Republican,
Right.
whatever, but you still might like push it up, just to see.
Right.
Um, I don't know, but I just thought this was a, you know, interesting few stories to cover.
Sure.
Um,
I mean, it's not surprising, again, given our day and age, clickbait is a thing.
yep,
And I think if you do it well, then it can work in your favor. But I think if it's a total like fleece in terms of like, oh no, this is really what this is about, I think then,
yep,
that's something different. But I think there is a way that you can do it. I think we try to do it kind of correctly here, that we want to be provocative, but in a way that makes sense versus
Yeah.
a total gotcha.
Well, and I also want that clickbait to benefit our not clickbait stories, you know?
Right.
Like
Right.
that just because you joined for the clickbait, but you're here for the nutritious, like stories. So, but I think we covered that one. We did enough on that one.
That was easy.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Okay.